Welcome to tonight's Wellness Wednesday webinar. We've been hosting these Wellness Wednesday webinars for 3 years now. It seems unbelievable that much time has gone by, and we have brought to you week after week really awesome information on biohacking, all different topics. Tonight's topic I'm super excited about. I get to introduce tonight my friend Marco Rodriguez. And Marco has over 22 years experience, 31 in the medical field, but 22 years experience in rehabilitation. And what I love about Marco's story is it was prompted because he would not take no for an answer. He did not like the prognosis that was given for his son, and he just empowered himself to go figure things out. And you would be surprised, all these years later, where his son is 22 years later. Absolutely phenomenal. So he and his wife, Diane, Marco and his wife, Diane, founded Transformation Rehab in 2013. It is a transformation rehab and wellness center, and it's in El Paso, Texas. It's the largest practice of its kind in our country. They do physical, occupational, and speech therapy. They serve over 500 appointments weekly. It's really phenomenal what he's done. He's got so many accolades, like 2018 Distinguished Alumni of University of Texas Medical Branch, former board of the Autism Society in Texas. He's a keynote speaker. He was named Who's Who in Latin American Professionals. The list goes on, but tonight I'm just going to turn it over to Marco. He's going to share with us a presentation. We are going to cover biohacking, brain mapping, what he's seen, his experience. And Marco, with that, I turn it over to you, and I'm so grateful you're here with us tonight.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much for inviting me to come out. As I was mentioning earlier, I've been wanting to put something together for not only for myself and for my group and for as many of my patients, but I've been kind of procrastinating. So this really helped me to put things together. And so I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here and just share. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to just share my story. Two things you need to know about me. One, I am a bit of a science nerd. And second, I like to have fun. So hopefully this will be informative as well as entertaining. Now I'm going to share my screen. Let's see if hopefully it works. You let me know if it works. Let's see here.
Absolutely.
All right. Can you see that?
We got it. It's just not in presentation mode.
Right. So let me do this. There we go. All right. Is that good?
That's perfect.
All right. Let's see here. All right. So, like I said, I'm going to share my story, and hopefully it will resonate with you. So today we're going to be talking about brain health, and just a very generalized topic on brain health. And please keep in mind, when I say generalized, the brain is the single most complex organ on the planet. And as such, it requires lots of different compounds at various levels in order to function properly. Now, obviously, in 30 minutes, we don't have time to cover all of that. So I'm going to go over some real basic things that I found are sort of foundational for brain health. Now, obviously, this is not the end-all be-all. And one thing I want to make very clear is that this is not a medical conference, so nothing that I say should be interpreted as is my giving medical advice, and this is certainly not intended to treat, cure, or mitigate disease. Again, I'm just going to share my experiences, and I'll probably share a little bit as to why I believe this has helped not only myself, my two sons, and many of my patients. All right. Now, in order to understand the brain, keep in mind the brain is made up of over 100 billion interconnected neurons. That's a neuron. And those neurons, those brain cells, are in constant communication with each other. And the brain communicates two ways. One is electrical and one is chemical. And so one thing all science agrees upon is that the number one step that each of us should take in order to optimize brain health is to reduce oxidative stress. As you can see here, there are thousands of studies in the archives of the National Library of Medicine, more affectionately known as PubMed.gov, on how oxidative stress affects and negatively impacts brain health. For those of you who don't know what oxidative stress is, I left this example. Oxidative stress, if you take a bite out of an apple and you let the apple sit out for a while, what happens to the apple? Right, it turns brown, it oxidizes. The same process happens inside of our bodies. The only reason why we don't oxidize as quickly as an apple is because our body produces certain enzymes to help to mitigate that. Unfortunately, as we get older, or because of the environmental toxins, we are overwhelmed with free radicals that the level of cytotoxicity begins to go through the roof, and we're unable to manage it adequately. So where does oxidative stress come from? Yep, food we eat, air we breathe. Did you know that over 85,000 toxic chemicals have been introduced into our environment since the Industrial Revolution? And there was a study that was done by some scientists where they measured the blood cord of newborns, and they found that the average baby has 287 toxic chemicals, including 180 toxic chemicals that are known carcinogens. Guys, our babies are being born with this, and you can't tell me that having that kind of level of toxicity in our body isn't affecting not only our body, but also our brain, which is probably the most fragile organ that we have. And so somebody might say, well, you know, I eat organically, I take care of myself, I exercise. Okay, well, that's good. That's better than nothing. But this study by UCLA compared the nutritional content of food compared to the 1950s. And what they found is that you'd have to literally eat 43 bowls of spinach today in order to get the same nutritional content as one bowl back in the 1950s. Keep in mind, you have 37.2 trillion cells in your body, and every single day, every single one of those cells is bombarded by 10,000 free radicals. Again, per cell, per day. So no matter how much you try to eat nutritious food, it's just not enough, because the antioxidants, for example, in an orange, it has vitamin C, which is a known antioxidant. You would literally have to eat 531 billion oranges a day in order to get the level of antioxidant protection that you need when you consider the amount of toxins that we're exposed to today. All right. So over time, as those oxidative stress, those cytotoxicity levels continue to just flow in your body, it eventually gets into your cells and starts to cause mitochondrial damage. Your mitochondria is very important. It is 10% of your total body weight. If you look at the bottom left of the screen, you have 10 million billion mitochondria. It's very important for energy. And so if your mitochondria is low in your body, well, okay, yeah, you might have a little bit of, you might feel a little sluggish and so forth. But can you imagine if you lost 10, 15, or 30% of the mitochondria in your brain cells? Losing 30% of your brain's capacity is significant. So you want to start working on, oh, this is a really good illustration of how the oxidative stress starts to do damage inside the mitochondria, which of course carries a significant amount of your DNA. So over time, that oxidative stress level starts to flow through your body, starts wrapping itself around the DNA, and really starts to do a lot of damage to the DNA. So if eating proper foods and organic isn't enough, what is sufficient? What else can you do? Let me just put it that way. What else can you do? Well, if you go into the archives of the National Library of Medicine, again, it's pubmed.gov, you'll see thousands of studies how Nrf2 activation reduces oxidative stress. We know that Protandim is an Nrf2 activator. So to me, I'm thinking, hey, I know how to connect the dot. So I started looking at, okay, how can we incorporate Protandim, Nrf2, into our bodies so that we can improve brain health. Now, what I love about Protandim is it's been studied by universities from all around the world. For example, LSU, in conjunction with the Skin Cancer Foundation, found that Protandim in a topical reduced the proliferation of skin melanoma by 57%. John Hopkins did a very similar study on lung cancer, et cetera, et cetera. And I know we're not talking about cancer, this is about brain health. But I just want you to know that Protandim is not some fly-by-night product. This has actually been studied by some of the top universities around the world. In fact, Harvard studied it. The National Institute of Aging, which is a part of the National Institute of Health, that's our government tax dollars. They spent 10 years studying Protandim. Now, I know our federal government can be a little wasteful at times, but think about it. They spent 10 years to study this plant-based nutritional compound. What do you think they're looking for? At the end of the study, they concluded that Protandim was the only natural product clinically proven to extend life for mammals. Doesn't work on birds or reptiles or fish. They don't have the same enzymatic structures that we do. But certainly, if you're a mammal, it would work. People, dogs, cats, lions, tigers, bears, everything. And so we know that Protandim is also the most potent of the Nrf2 inducers out there, as per a study that was done by a pharmaceutical company, no less, called Biogen. They compared Protandim to their product, which is also it's a synthetic Nrf2 activator. It's for multiple sclerosis. It's called BG12, now it's called Tecfidera. At the study, they concluded that Protandim was the most potent inducer and therefore may be the most suited as a therapeutic strategy. Now, guys, that really speaks volumes to me when a pharmaceutical company is willing to admit, hey, this little product, this plant-based product is actually a better inducer than our multi-million. It took them millions of dollars to develop this, and it's about a $60,000 a year medication. And Protandim, which is about what, 50, 60 bucks a month, outperformed it. It was amazing. So Protandim, what it is, it's 5 plant-based ingredients: ashwagandha, bacopa, green tea, milk thistle, and turmeric in a very specific blend that activates that Nrf2 pathway, essentially reducing oxidative stress, those cytotoxicity levels, by an average of 40% in 30 days and up to 70% in 120 days. So as we mentioned before, high levels of oxidative stress will damage the mitochondria. So getting rid of oxidative stress is important. But is there a way to go back and rebuild or replace the damaged mitochondria? Well, we know according to PubMed, the research in PubMed, that if you activate the Nrf1 pathway, that puts the cells into a state of mitochondrial biogenesis, which simply means the creation of newer and healthier mitochondria. So we know that Nrf1, if you can activate Nrf1 and you can get the better mitochondria in the brain cells, obviously that's going to do wonders for brain health. And so the folks at LiveVantage, once again, they went back to plant-based ingredients, and they found that their Nrf1 activator boosts that Nrf1 gene by 70%, essentially putting your cells, every cell in your body, into a state of mitochondrial biogenesis. And that has all kinds of different benefits, which I can't really go into tonight because I am pressed for time. But if you can reduce oxidative stress and improve mitochondrial production, your brain should function a whole lot better. The next thing I want to talk about is methylation cycles. This is very important, especially for people who have the MTHFR gene mutation, which about 40 to 50% of the population do. Those individuals cannot process things like gluten. So going gluten-free is a big thing nowadays. A lot of restaurants are offering gluten-free options, but also folic acid. That's a little lesser known, but folic acid, which is a synthetic vitamin B, they're unable to process that. So that creates a lot of what's called glutamate, which is a very important neurotransmitter, but it has to be strictly managed. And it's managed with the methylation cycle of methylated B vitamins, as well as glutathione, which is something that Protandim also activates. And without that, you have tons of glutamate in the brain, which does a lot of damage. And so there have been a lot of studies stating that high levels of glutamate could lead to, for example, autism and all types of other mental health disorders. And so we're not talking about a treatment or a cure or mitigating all of that. But for me, if these issues were affecting my son and affecting me and my patients, I wanted to do what I could to promote brain health. So for us, we decided to go with Axio. Now, there's different ways of getting the methylated B vitamins. You could go and get shots. There's people who go in and go once a week to go get methylated B12 shots. I wasn't going to do that, and neither was my son, and neither are most of my patients. They're too busy, and they don't have time. But with Axio, it's got all of these different ingredients in it. I call it liquid brain food. So it's got the methylated B vitamins. It's got magnesium, rhodiola rosea, pine bark extract, all the things that your brain needs. So I call it liquid brain food. And because it's got different flavors, it's the kids love it. It's great tasting. My favorite is dragon fruit. Some people like the sour cherry or red raspberry. I like to take the red raspberry with me when I go out to dinner. And so I just order an iced tea, unsweetened, take the red raspberry, put it into my iced tea. And now I got raspberry iced tea that's also liquid brain food. I love it. So what are the results? And I say it this way because Confucius once said, is to know something and not do anything about it is the same as not knowing. So when I started learning about all of this, back in my days of working in inpatient rehab on the stroke and brain injury unit, and then as we opened up our practice, and then with all the issues that occurred, Diane and I have 6 children. 2 of them were special needs, and we're having significant brain issues. We started looking at, okay, well, we know this information. What are we going to do about it? So I'm going to give you a couple of their stories. This is Patrick. Very early on, Patrick was having a lot of issues in school. We did what any good parent would do. We took him to go get tested, and they could never quite figure out what was going on. We heard ADD, ADHD. His neuroelectrical patterns were consistent with a person with autism. We did it, what every good parent should do. I can't even remember how many thousands of dollars we spent on academic tutoring, and we tried almost every medication we could possibly under the sun. I mean, we tried everything, and nothing was really helping him. So I went into PubMed, and that's when I first started learning about all of this, and we started applying what we learned to optimize his brain health. I wasn't going to treat autism. I just want to make that very clear. I wasn't treating ADD or ADHD. I was focused on brain health because I knew that if I could optimize his brain health, then a lot of these issues would kind of take care of themselves, right? So this is Patrick. He's the one on the right here. And so Patrick, it wasn't magic. It did take time, but he started to progress, started to do a little bit better. And so because my wife is a 5th degree black belt in judo, can you imagine that? Patrick got really excited about starting judo as he started to understand his interaction with the people started getting better. The sensory processing issues started to decline. So he started taking judo. Lo and behold, he was really good. This is at the Texas State Championship, okay? And so I want you to take a look at this. He's the one on the right. He caused the guy to tap out, took first place in the state of Texas, was invited to compete in New Mexico and took first place at the New Mexico Games. This is Patrick today. He's living in College Station on his own. And I want you to keep in mind that according to a study that I read in PubMed, only 5% of individuals, autistic adults, are living independently. Okay, Patrick is living on his own, going to college, studying kinesiology, and he wants to be a nutritionist, get his master's in nutrition because he wants to promote what we call the biohacking, the activation lifestyle for people that are like him, neuroatypicals, and for persons with all types of other types of brain issues. So now I'm going to talk about my other son, Seth. Seth was born as a typical rambunctious kid. But at 7 years old, he had a very nasty accident. He fell 8 feet onto a concrete floor. He fell 8 feet onto a concrete floor and sustained a traumatic brain injury. So for 8 years, he was in special education, had an IEP, and he just really struggled. His speech was severely, he had a speech impediment. And so I tricked him. He wanted to play basketball, and I thought, kid, you can hardly coordinate anything. But his older brothers were really good basketball players, so I tricked them, and I said, Seth, if you will take this pill, the Nrf2, and the Axio, it might make you a better basketball player. Look what happened 4 months later. He tested out of special education. Now, I want you to understand something. This was 8 years in the making. He was in special education for 8 years. We tried everything, medications, therapy, all of that. 4 months later, he tests out of special education, graduates from high school in advanced placement, getting college credit. This is Seth today. He is in the United States Air Force and studying mechanical engineering. Went too far. Studying mechanical engineering, working on aerospace propulsion systems. I promised him I would get that right. Aerospace propulsion systems. Guys, this is a kid who was in special education for 8 years. And we thought, what in the world is he going to be able to do for a living? We put him on the products, and in 4 months, he blew it out of the water, and he's doing excellent now. This is a good slide this is Dr. Brett Grimhall. He is a physician in Phoenix. And if you look at the differences in handwriting, the left compared to the right, And as a therapist, I know that handwriting is an indication of how organized a person's brain is. So just huge, huge differences. Now, this one is this. I want you to meet George. That's his real name. He is Dr. Letty's husband. Dr. Letty is a surgeon in our area. George has Parkinson's. So we went to go talk to Dr. Letty, and she heard about Protandim and wanted to know what Protandim and Axio. Oh, and also the collagen. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. The collagen. And so that okay, what does he do? How can it help him? I said, I don't know. I can't really promise you anything. So she decided she was going to document the results. Then, unbeknownst to him, she documented it. I want you to take a look at this. This is before Protandim. The second one I'm going to show you is 2 months after taking the products. And then the third one is 3 months later. Take a look. Few months later, 3 months later. Okay, guys, I've been doing this therapy thing for 31 years. If I had not seen it with myself, with my own eyes, I would have never believed that that was possible. I sent it to my son, who is a doctor of physical therapy. I can't really say all the things that he said because this is kind of a family show, but suffice to say, it was something like, holy cow, I've never seen anything like this before. All right, so now I'm going to share one final story, and this is a personal story. I promised Andrea that I would do it. I wasn't going to, but I am a man of my word. This is my own personal story. And on July 3rd, 2021, I sustained a pretty severe brain injury. I had a ruptured artery that bled and requiring 10 titanium coils to fix. The neurosurgeon says that the national average is 3. I have 10. So as my colleague and dear friend, Dr. Nancy Bryant, once told me, Marco, you're a real metalhead. Like I said, I was in a coma. I was in ICU for several weeks. And so here I am today, doing very well, making lots of progress. Brain is improving. It's still continuing to improve. Keep in mind, brain injuries require a very long time to heal. So don't wait till you have a brain injury or having some kind of brain issue. Start taking care of your brain now. I saw so many different results and so much progress that we decided to start tracking this at our clinic. So we do what's called QEEG brain map studies, which formulates a 3-dimensional image of the brain's electrical activity. And from that, we can measure how well the brain is functioning. And so with that, we started doing these before and after studies. So I want you to take a look at this. So all of this orange, yellows, and reds, that's bad. I met with Dr. Bryant recently, and she described all of this as screaming monkeys. Okay, so this is all very chaotic functioning brain. And look what happens 3 months later after we introduce Protandim Nrf2 as well as the Axio. And now we're seeing even better results, which I don't have the slides yet, but we're seeing even better results when you combine Nrf2, the Axio, and the collagen. So maybe by this time next year, I'll have a little bit more data on that. So this is what we've done. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Andrea. I'm going to open it up for questions. Guys, as the slide says, you only have one brain. It is, as I mentioned before, the most complex organ you have in your body. Without a functional brain, it's going to be really hard to function through life. So we saw it with myself, with my sons, with my patients. And so now that's why we recommend these protocols for anyone for optimal brain health. So with that, let's turn it back over to Andrea.
Marco, you had me laughing and you had me crying on this presentation tonight. I'm just mind blown. I feel like this is a huge victory. We're living in a day and age where 54% of our children have chronic and autoimmune diseases. And that's just children. This is a loud cry for victory. And I absolutely love that you found this healing because you were determined that you were not going to be your son's not going to be a prognosis. You weren't going to accept that. This has been phenomenal. I don't know if you caught on the call tonight, but these are three very different brain issues that we were talking about tonight. We were talking about someone who was a neurotypical, and we're talking about someone who has a severe brain injury, and then we're talking about a ruptured aneurysm. And all three of them are just so phenomenal. Marco, thank you for sharing your own story. I would actually like you to go a little more into that, because you and I had a conversation, and you shared with me that they were just so blown away by the fact that you lived through that. Praise God.
Amen.
But that you actually, you're.
Oh, I lost the signal. It froze. I don't know if you're still there or not.
We can hear you, Marco.
Okay, can y'all hear Andrea?
No.
Okay, so she froze, not me. All right. Well, here's what I'll do. Andrea, are you there? All right, so here's what I'll do, because I know what Andrea was alluding to, and we did have a conversation previously. I was not going to share this, but I remembered what my son, my oldest son, the one who's a physical therapist now, when he was visiting me in ICU, he says, "Dad, okay, let me see if I can get through this without breaking down." He says, "Dad, you've spent your entire life telling other people's story. Now it's time for you to go tell yours. Go make your story." And so when Andrea was right, it was a very large bleed. I required 10 titanium coils to keep me from bleeding to death. The national average is 3. So it was a fairly large bleed. I was in a coma, all that stuff. Anyhow, and so I've really started this. I started to see. Oh, the one thing that the surgeon told my wife, I was unconscious, right? And so I didn't hear it, because she told me this later. She said that the surgeon went to her and says, "We repaired the bleed, and your husband's going to live. He's going to be okay." And he says, "But it's interesting, because it's almost like your husband's brain is already started putting itself back together. The healing process has already begun quicker than I've ever seen before." And keep in mind, Dr. Hassan is one of the top neurovascular surgeons in the country. He was in South Texas at the time. We were on vacation in South Texas, so in Harlingen. And so maybe that was a blessing in disguise. But anyhow, so my brain has started putting itself together again. I remember that there was another neuro-ophthalmologist who told my wife that whatever progress I had made up until that point, that was it, because I was about 4 or 5, maybe 6 months post. And he says, "No, that's it. The brain doesn't regenerate itself." And so my wife got mad, and I just looked at her and I just said, I don't accept that. I know that what we're doing works. And so I've been following the protocols myself, and sure enough, my brain continues to heal. It is a very slow process. And one thing I want to say is that there are limitations to neuroplasticity. In other words, if you lose an entire portion of the brain, gets wiped out, the brain's not going to magically grow a new whatever lobe any more than the body can produce a new arm if it's been amputated. But within reason, the brain can heal itself. It's called dendritic sprouting. It's called axonal sprouting and axonal genesis. And I didn't get into the details and all the neuroscience behind it, but we know that Nrf2 activation is essential for dendritic and axonal sprouting. And that's just the ability for the brain to create new pathways, alternate pathways. So anyhow, I don't want to get too detailed or sciencey, because it's just kind of hard to explain, and most people they just want to know if it works. So anyhow, I'll just leave it at that.
Marco, I'm back on. I apologize for that. My internet just caved in, but I'm glad you kept going. Gosh, if anyone has any questions, put them in the chat for Marco. Marco, I know we can keep you here all night. You just wowed us with that presentation. Absolutely floored us. I really would love to have you come back on, because I know you have things in the works in your practice. I know you're looking at some new things. You have a lot of neurofeedback, but you're looking into possibly getting some chemical feedback. And I'm really excited to continue to follow what you're seeing And I would also maybe just really quickly, if you can talk about the collagen, I don't know if I missed that, but is there something you'd like to share about just adding the collagen and what you've seen?
Absolutely. So to be honest, when the collagen first came out, I thought, okay, it's a beauty product. Okay, great. My modeling days are way back there. I'm never going to do any of that. I don't look like Brad Pitt or any of that. But the more I started looking into it, I started realizing that collagen is so important for brain health, not only for the overall structural integrity of the brain, but also because the cellular membranes require collagen in order to keep them healthy. And what I love about the LifeVantage liquid collagen is that it boosts an enzyme, a very critical enzyme called superoxide dismutase, SOD. It boosts it by 2,700%. Now, when we're talking about reducing oxidative stress, if you can get glutathione with the Nrf2 and the SOD from the collagen, your brain is going to really start showing some improvement. So after the aneurysm, my brain was really funky for a while. I mean, I was making better progress than the average person, but I still was very kind of lethargic. My brain was just trying to figure out how to kick in. And we didn't have the collagen back then. So the collagen came out shortly after that. I started taking it. My wife says that she noticed results or improvements in my brain function almost immediately. I mean, probably within a week or two.
Wow.
Yeah, it's hard for me to tell because I am me, so I'm not on the outside looking at myself. But I've had lots of people tell me that it's like, Marco, your affect is better, you're doing better, you're talking, because I was very slow in my speech before, and so obviously that's not an issue now. There was another dear friend of mine who was having issues with depression. And so because of some issues that had occurred, some family tragedies, started taking the collagen. And I saw I could see it from within a matter of a couple months. Like she's back on fire. She's doing great. And so I'm going to spend some time doing a little bit more research on the collagen, because obviously from what I'm seeing, there is a significant amount of benefits, I guess if I can say it that way, that the brain needs. So it's more than just a beauty product, not to mention the fact that if you want to protect your brain, you got to protect the arteries. You got to protect the what supplies the brain with blood. And all of your arteries they require collagen in order to keep them strong and keep the elasticity. So yeah, collagen is going to be huge, huge, huge for brain health. And I look forward to coming back and elaborating more on that.
I can't wait. There's something in the chat I would love to share. JR shares, my amyloid plaques disappeared after 2 months on Nrf2 and Nrf1. Axio and collagen weren't available then. The brain plaques followed a traumatic brain injury and were tracked over the years on brain scans. My doctor was baffled when my last scan showed no plaques. I'm so grateful. I mean, it's
Wow.
it's phenomenal. The body, you give the body what it needs and it really sets itself up. I am so excited and so hopeful to get this recording out to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I love it because I love that quantitative data, because, a lot of times you can say, well, it's a placebo effect. You think you're feeling better and doing better. But, a brain map measures the electrical activity of the brain. I can't convince you that your brain patterns, your neuroelectrical patterns are doing better. I can't convince someone that the plaques in the brain are disappearing. You can't do that. I mean, it's either there or it's not. Not to mention the fact that there's all these animal studies as well, and there's no placebo effect with animals. Yes. So yeah, I love this quantitative data. That's why we're looking into that new system that's it's a neurotransmitter scan that measures the chemical portion of the brain. So we're going to be looking into that. Hopefully we can get that before the end of the year.
Marco, we're going to make a date and we're going to have you back on. But with that, I'm going to close out, just checking real quick if there's any questions. Just a lot of praise God. So happy you were here. Don't put limits on your transformation, a quote from Dr. Dispenza. Just lots of love for you in the chat, Marco. Thank you so much for coming on. I will get you this recording, and just so blessed to be here tonight with everybody. God bless you all. Have a great night and take care.
Thank you. God bless you.